Who said it was going to be a weak slate of college football? We got upsets happening all across the country. Coaches already on the hot seat after week 2, and Alabama bounces back in a big way. Let's get it going.
Welcome to the Pigskin Cafe. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
They had to win this game.
There's a problem. This one's tough.
We are back.
That's what my gut's telling me.
I genuinely could not believe it.
You don't live in the great state of Texas.
All right, big boy. Hold my sweet tea.
What are we doing?
Welcome back into the Pigskin Cafe. My name is Hampton Sippert. I've got my good friend Graham Haney here with me today, and we are thanking the Lord that we get to talk about our favorite sport in the world, college football. So before we dive into this week's action and covering Alabama blowing out Louisiana Monroe and other big upsets and storylines from across the country, a few housekeeping items. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and leave us a like on this video. We cannot thank you guys enough. Apparently, everyone was excited to see Graham and I lose our collective mind over Alabama losing to Florida State, because our last video, we were just overwhelmed with the support that we received, and we couldn't thank you guys enough. Thank you for subscribing. I asked for you to get us over 200. We're almost to 300 now, boys and girls. Let's keep it going. Let's keep this train rolling, and we just appreciate it from the bottom of our heart. And Graham, without further ado, let's get into it. Alabama bounced back in a big way against Louisiana Monroe, and they needed to, because last week against Florida State was an abject disaster. It was embarrassing, and Graham and I both were fired up. We didn't call for anybody to be fired. We didn't say that the season was a lost cause by any stretch of the imagination, but we did say we need to see a response, and that our faith in this coaching staff and this team had been shaken. Well, that was immediately after the game. And I think one thing that I like to do is, as a fan, you can get into a very negative mental space where, Alabama's doomed, the season's over, Kalen DeBoer's not the guy. And about Monday or Tuesday, I had to pivot. I had to kind of try to figure out in my mind, why did the result on Saturday happen? Did Kalen DeBoer forget how to coach football? No. Did his staff forget? No. He got this job for a reason. As we said on the last show, he got Washington to a national championship. So it doesn't make sense to know that he's a really good ball coach, to know that all offseason, all we've heard from people who I respect, a guy like Greg McElroy, a guy like Cole Kublik, a guy like Josh Pate, who said, hey, I went and saw this team practice. I watched them scrimmage. I was impressed with how clean the operations were. Guys were holding each other accountable, and there was a level of competitive character and physicality on display within those practices and within those scrimmages, but that did not translate to the first game of the year. And I know I listed off the stat in the last show that in his last 10 before the Louisiana Monroe game, Kalen DeBoer was 5-5 with 4 losses against unranked opponents. And so this week I was trying to see how these married together. And I think, Graham, I came up with an observation that I want to get your thoughts on, because there's a lot of people after this game saying, or after the Florida State game, that were saying, Kalen DeBoer just can't coach in the South. He can't coach this type of player. And on and on and on the reasonings went. I think it's a little more nuanced than that. All right. So I kind of want to lay the scenario out, and I want to do it quickly, but I also want to flesh it out in detail. Alabama fans have complained. They complained last year, and they've complained against Florida State about the undisciplined play, the lack of physicality, and struggling against teams that, on paper, you're more talented than. Graham, I think after some reflection that I can contend, and that I have stats to back it up, this did not start under Kalen DeBoer. This started under Nick Saban in his final few years. We've talked about on the show, Graham, that after 2020, Alabama was still elite. There was no need to hit the panic button. There was no need to run Nick Saban out of town, but there was a dip in the program. We've acknowledged that, and a lot of fans have. And starting in 2021, Alabama started struggling against teams that were unranked and struggling on the road. 2021 alone, the Florida game, that team finished unranked. You won by 2 on the road. You struggled. You played LSU later in the year. I don't even think they made a bowl game. They fired Ed Orgeron after that season. You won by a touchdown. You barely won. Played Arkansas, I think, the week or two after. Struggled with them, barely came out with a victory. Auburn, the week after that, a team that finished 6-7. You struggle with them. Okay? Sensing a trend here. We complained about penalties in those years as well. Fast forward to 2022. Where'd your 2 losses come? On the road. Where did your 1 loss come in 2021? On the road, where you played a Texas A&M team, another unranked opponent who you were more talented than, and you lost. 2022, you go to Tennessee. You commit 17 penalties on the road. You go to LSU. You lose in overtime. And again, that both of Tennessee and LSU were really good teams, but especially that Tennessee game. And people don't remember, Alabama got down 28-0 early in that game and had to battle back to even make it a contest. 2023, yes, you lost to Texas at home, but you struggled against an Arkansas team that I don't even think made a bowl game. You struggled against an A&M team that ended up firing Jimbo Fisher at the end of the year. You struggled again against an Auburn team that made a bowl game, I believe, at 6-6. Okay? So, not only that, but in those ball games, there were penalty issues, and there was a constant theme, Graham, that I don't know if you remember. After the Tennessee game in 2022, Nick Saban said, and Alabama fans were apoplectic when he did and shocked, because he said his team played with anxiety, which was a foreign concept to anybody who had watched any Nick Saban team, previously. Alabama was always the enforcer. They came in they went into your trap and took over your trap. That was the theme. That was the credo of the Nick Saban dynasty. Last year, Kalen DeBoer takes over. And some of these same issues that he inherited, not that he created, that he inherited, were still persistent. Vanderbilt, you had a lack of physicality in that game. You had a lack of juice and a lack of effort. You lost on the road to Tennessee. You lost on the road to Oklahoma. And I would contend that the quarterback was the main issue in those 2 games, not the defense and not a lack of effort or urgency, but you still had some of the penalty issues, and you still had some of the guys who have been in the program not playing to the level that they're capable of and the level that they're expected. This year, same thing. So I say that to say, I'm not excusing Kalen DeBoer at all for the lack of discipline, for some of the issues that we hashed out last week that I'm not going to rehash. But I'll end with this. Graham, you and I both in 2023, when Oregon and Washington played those 2 times, we both picked Oregon, right? We both felt Oregon was going to hand it to those Washington teams. But Kalen DeBoer's Washington, they were the enforcers in both of those games. I remember coming on this show and saying how shocked I was at the amount of physicality and tenacity that those teams played with in those 2 contests. All right? This year and last year, we talked about it. Some of the best players on Alabama's team were Washington transfers or transfers from other programs. Look no more than the last week against Florida State. Alabama's 3 best offensive players, Jeremy Bernard, Washington transfer. Parker Brailsford is the best offensive lineman on Alabama's team. Not Caden Proctor. Parker Brailsford is. Washington transfer. Their best tight end, Josh Cuevas, Washington transfer. Defensively, your best players, LT Overton, Keon Sabb, Damani Jackson, all transfers. And then the other guys who I thought played really well were freshmen that have come in and played solely under DeBoer, or they're upperclassmen that didn't really play much under Saban. I'm not putting all the blame on Saban at all. My contention is, especially in the game against Florida State, because Kalen DeBoer was shocked, I think legitimately shocked by the outcome against Florida State. I think some of the guys that play under Saban that experience some of the same struggles on the road with undisciplined play, with lack of physicality at times, some of those guys' psychological disposition and competitive character may not be exactly where it needs to be. It definitely is not where it was under the height of the Nick Saban dynasty. And it shows me players respond to Kalen DeBoer. But there's some of these former Nick Saban players who were talented by all measures, but in big games on the road when adversity hits, their response, their mental toughness has not always been apparent. That gives me a little bit more encouragement going forward. And I think it kind of transitions us a little bit into this game with Louisiana Monroe. But before we transition into the game, Graham, what do you think of that observation / theory? Do you agree with it? Or are you like Susie from Gunnersville, want to win the lottery and get Kalen DeBoer the heck out of town?
Yeah, Hampton, good to be back with you. Want to thank all the fans, those who are listening. We appreciate it. Know that Hampton and I love having these conversations, and it just makes us feel good to know that you like hearing about them and you like tuning in. So we appreciate that. Your support means a lot to us. But to answer your question, Hampton, I think that, as you mentioned, the players playing in a sense of anxiety, that leads Kalen DeBoer to also feel that sense of anxiety because, well, let's face it, if Susie from Gunnersville would have won the Powerball on Thursday, then Kalen DeBoer would not have been coaching this football game. But what we know is that what happens with the coaches and their mentality reflects directly with how the players feel and how they play. I feel like, especially with the last few years of the Saban dynasty, because I feel like it's fair to still call it that players were playing not to lose. They were just trying not to make the mistake and not be the one that fumbled the bag and lost the game for their team. Knowing that so much had been built on this program, not only in the players, in the fan base, in the coaching staff, and throughout the entire college football world, because of Nick Saban's legacy and his ability to successfully put out a great football team year in and year out. Hampton, I think that really speaks volumes to the effort we saw against Florida State. And I think especially these last few years, last year particularly with Kalen DeBoer and translating this year, when we play these so-called cupcake games, which, let's face it, that's what they are, Alabama puts up and shows up. Offense plays well. The defense shows up. And they have results like they did this past week, 73-0. Mm-hmm. But then you have moments last year where there's so much on the line, not just we have to beat Vanderbilt, but we've not lost to Vanderbilt in 40 years. We've not lost an opening day game in 20 years. Hampton, I feel like that speaks volumes to we're so scared to mess it up that we end up actually messing it up. Mm-hmm. Like we're not playing with that level of physicality and that aggressiveness that's needed in order to sustain what we've built. But let's face it, let's look back a week, and especially after we've seen Florida State play one more game, also a cupcake game against East Texas A&M. That was Tennessee that played at East Tennessee State. Same colors, so that's what tricked me. Man, you saw Florida State slinging it. You saw Florida State putting up a ton of points. And let's face it, Castellanos, quarterback for Florida State, is a dog. He's a flat-out dog, a baller, a playmaker. And I don't know that Alabama went into that game with, in a sense, full knowledge of what he was capable of. Mm-hmm. You look back a year, he was at Boston College, had big disagreements with Bill O'Brien and how schematics work, how the team was run, and ends up only playing a few games and then sits out to transfer to at least save the year. And so you look now, Castellanos and Gus Malzahn had been together at UCF, a great fit. And you see that just them mesh together so well. And a team that was physical was Florida State. Alabama really improved this week in that level of physicality. Although against subpar competition, no doubt, we saw a little bit of that physicality back in that sense of urgency of I've got to make the play and I got to make it now. I've got to run to the football. I've got to tackle hard. I've got to lower my shoulder to get extra yards. And we saw that. But Hampton, I want to go back just a little bit to a point you made that certain fans were saying that Kalen DeBoer could not coach in the South. And Hampton, as much as I wish it was the case, and you wish it was the case, or wish it were the case, whichever the proper English is on that, this college football landscape is no longer a regional game. It's not. We see conferences expanding coast to coast, television deals taking over conferences, taking over alignments, and taking over competitive football games. We see them taking over rivalries because what's more important, the money or the legend? And we see right now in college football, it's the money. And so, Hampton, I want to just speak to that for a second, that it isn't a regional game anymore. The players that Alabama puts on the field day in and day out, the majority of them are not from Alabama. If you look at it, a large portion of them aren't even from the Southeast. Hampton, you mentioned some of our best players all being transfers. You know, the three you mentioned coming from Washington, not from the South. You know, you see LT Overton come from A&M, consider that the South. But our team has been made up of players from around the country, and as Alabama grows in popularity, so does our fan base. See, the reason is there's no longer the local newspaper and the local radio station that's covering Alabama football exclusively. We see online platforms just like this one talking about Alabama football. That's because we love it. But we see people talking about Alabama football throughout the entire country.
Yeah.
And Hampton, that puts more and more pressure on these players. Because it's not just old Bill at the country store reading the newspaper that's going to be disappointed if Alabama loses. Or old Betty Sue listen to Alabama on the radio that's going to be disappointed if Alabama loses. Or Susie from Gunnersville being disappointed if Alabama loses. Hampton, whenever Alabama does not play up to the standard, whenever they lose, or even they pull out a close win, that is national news coverage. And unfortunately, some of these players can't handle that for whatever reason. Is it justifiable? Maybe. But the game has changed. And so our players, our fan base, our coaches also have to adapt to know that what's over is over. We can only control what we're facing now and what we'll face going forward. We can only control us. Yep. We have to play with that level of urgency, that sense of we have to make the play. We've got to be we have to be at the mentality that the game's on the line every play. Hampton, I think it's as simple as that things have changed and we have to adapt with them. And that's more than just NIL. That's just what college football is now. It is a national game. It's a national news story every single week. So Alabama has to be ready to bring it.
100%, Graham. And I want to touch on one or two things real quick, and then we're going to transition to the game, the game against Louisiana Monroe. You talked about the pressure of playing at Alabama, wearing that script day, and what it means, and the standard that you have to live up to. And I think, especially recently, a lot of guys have crumbled under that pressure. And I think, again, it speaks to what Nick Saban said about players having anxiety. He even talked on game day this week about the pressure and the expectation to win every game. Kalen DeBoer talked about in his post-game presser and in his Monday presser last week, guys need to just let loose, have fun, play the game. And again, I know that, especially, I didn't love it when I heard it at first, but what I think he means is guys were playing timid because they were in a hostile environment. And like Vanderbilt last year, they got punched in the mouth, and I don't think they were expecting it. And they didn't have the competitive character, the pride, the mental toughness to overcome it. Where in the past, if a team hit Alabama, Alabama was going to deliver a knockout blow. And they were going to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it until you fell, until the opponent was crawling off the field. That is how they played. What I will say to transition us to this game is that I think ultimately for the future of Alabama, not just this season, I think it's encouraging that the guys who were the best performers on this team right now, to me, are the transfers that KDB has brought in. Are the guys from Washington who, did it look like Florida State affected Parker Brailsford last week? Did it look like it affected Jeremy Bernard? Did it look like it affected Keon Sapp, LT Overton? And again, there are exceptions to the rules. There are guys that have been at Alabama for years and have started that did play well. I'm just saying, to me, that has been a persistent trend for 2 years now. And I don't think it's a coinky-dink. And I don't think it's because there are guys that came in that were more hungry. Jeremy Bernard was not a 5-star, but he was a top 150 national player. It's not like he was a 3-star who had to scrape and claw for everything he's gotten, even though he has. But let me tell you something. That kid is from Washington. He understands the level and the standard at Alabama better than probably 90% of that roster. And like you said, Graham, I know there's been a push by many, including A.J. McCarron, who I love, about we need guys from the South who get it, who get Alabama and get the standard and get the pageantry, the tradition, the rivalries, and how much it means to people in the state. I understand to a degree, but I'd also argue last week, especially, 2 of your worst players, and I'm not going to call them by name, were from Alabama, where the guys who played the best, like Xavier Brown and Jeremy Bernard and Brailsford and Cuevas and Sabb, they're not from this area, but they know what it means to play with pride and play for the script A on their chest. So flip into this game and how this conversation, which I think is really important to have, because I wanted to kind of have a little bit of a reset after what we had last week where we just kind of laid into everybody. Like I said, this does not excuse some of the coaching decisions in the game last week and some of the issues that have been persistent. I just think there's more on the players here, too, that maybe we didn't fully give credit for. But against Louisiana Monroe, there's not a whole lot that you can take from this game. Louisiana Monroe is not a good team, but you couldn't have scripted a better game for Alabama. They scored on every drive. They were dominant from start to finish. They were pretty clean overall in the penalty department. There was physicality. There was passion. There was excitement out on the field for when your teammates succeeded, when your teammates did well. I mean, that to me was the most encouraging thing. And we'll start on offense. I'll give some brief thoughts there, kick it to you, Graham. Then you can kind of give your feedback, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts on the defense, and then I'll give mine, and we'll kind of move on to some other big storylines from around the country. But Ty Simpson was phenomenal yesterday. And I get it's Louisiana Monroe, but going 17 for 17 for 226, 3 touchdowns in the air, and a rushing touchdown to boot. The guy was in command. He showed you every aspect of the talent that he has. He threw it on the run. He made plays out of structure. He stayed in the pocket, hung tough, and made throws down the field. I thought he did an excellent job. And maybe a game like this will give him confidence going forward. He can keep building and stacking on that, because I thought there were some other people for sure out there saying that he was not the problem against FSU. I stand by that. There were definitely things that he needed to get better at, including playing better on time, not holding on to the ball as long. And I thought he did a much better job of that in this game, playing within the offense. And I couldn't be happier for that kid with how he performed. The other two quarterbacks played really, really well. I thought Mack looked good. I thought Keelan showed you why he was the number 2 quarterback in the country coming out of high school. The talent is apparent. I mean, just the way he effortlessly throws a frozen rope. I think he's going to be excellent. And even though I think a lot of people may be jumping the gun a little bit on, some people I saw were like, he's our best quarterback right now. Love you, Brian. I think we need to pump the brakes on that just a hair. Be excited about the future. Great first outing, but it's Ty's job. It's Ty's team. And I think he showed that yesterday. Especially, man, those 2 throws to Jeremy Bernard, the one that didn't count, and the one to Isaiah Horton that counted later in the drive when after 2 touchdowns had been called back. Those were absolute dimes, man. On the run, playing just backyard football a little bit, having fun, letting it rip. Can't wait to see how he builds on that. 2 other storylines on offense, Graham. Kevin Riley, hot dog, man. Glenn Coffey Jr., Travis Fryer, shout out to you. He runs just like Glenn Coffey in a lot of ways. It's eerily similar. I think he runs really well through contact, got a great burst, great first explosive step, good vision, can catch the ball out of the backfield. Did you see how many catches the dude had that were not easy? They weren't easy catches for a receiver, and he was making them look routine. I think when Jam gets back, man, Jam and Kevin Riley are going to be a heck of a duo because they play actually a little bit different. They have a little bit of different style that I think you can kind of play and experiment with and use in different situations. I think that is really, really exciting. I'm excited to see his development continue. A.K. Deere popped a big run at the end. He's going to be a dude. He's got to learn to pass protect and learn the other little nuances of the game. But the talent is apparent with that kid. Michael Carroll looked good at right tackle. But the guy I got to talk about, Lasir Brooks, man. We've been telling you, we've been hearing how good that kid has looked since he stepped on campus. As soon as he gets the ball in his hands, it's different than anyone else Alabama has. And he wears 17. I'm not just saying it because it's the same number, but don't he remind everyone of Jalen Waddle? And that's not an original thought. A lot of people have said that. But I think he's going to be a vital part of the offense going forward. And I think Kalen DeBoer knows it. He complimented him after the Florida State game with like the little details in his snaps when he did get in his like 9 snaps against Florida State. I thought you saw another elevation of that against Louisiana Monroe. Excited to see him in a larger role. Last thing I'll say, Graham, and I mentioned this against Florida State, I love all the different formations, all the different looks, and the different concepts that Alabama is able to run this year. And again, I'm not taking a shot at the previous year. We're not doing that. But I'm just telling you, if you watch football, it's apparent that they trust Ty Simpson to do a lot at the line. They're giving him a ton of responsibility, check and play, set protection, a lot of check with me's. And I think he's doing a really good job of it. I noticed it last week. It was more apparent this week. And I love that we're running some single back. And I love the wrinkle of running basically a jumbo package with William Sanders as kind of an extra lineman that you kind of can motion and do a lot of stuff with. I think this is such a good foundation that they continue to build on as the season progresses, Graham. What did you make of the offensive performance? Is there anybody who really stood out to you that you kind of want to highlight before we transition to the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with Ty Simpson. I mean, total command, like you said. I really like that he spread the ball out. We saw him going to different guys throughout his entire time playing. Really did a good job of spreading the ball out, making sure that that Louisiana Monroe couldn't focus on one particular person, one particular player, and that definitely helps whenever you have a great run game and you're able to move the ball as well as Alabama did. 17 for 17 is remarkable for Ty Simpson. I mean, accurate, efficient, really in control of the offense. I think that another thing that I was kind of impressed by was that, second quarter, Austin Mack, I think it's second quarter. Austin Mack gets a series in,
Yep.
and he looks good too. So you have Ty in there playing good. Take him out, put Austin Mack in there. He looks good. You take him out, put Ty back in there, and Ty still looks good. I think that really goes to show that Ty has the capability and the quality to be a good quarterback and to lead this team going forward. I think that's not necessarily a sense to put pressure on Ty Simpson, but really goes to show that, you got to be able to start fresh. You got to start quick. And Ty was able to do that.
Yeah.
I think offensively, I think the whole game wise, Louisiana Monroe was not very good.
No.
Obviously, there's a huge talent disparity from Alabama and Louisiana Monroe. You see our guys on Alabama making big plays. You see Louisiana Monroe really not really knowing where to go and what to do, because even their fastest players are about the speed of our linebackers, running back, wide receiver, stuff like that, which really makes it hard to game plan and hard to call plays for Louisiana Monroe. Defensive, I guess for offensive wise, like I said, I was very pleased that we spread the ball out. But it's nice to see there's some guys actually starting to take the reins and take control. That Kevin Riley is really kind of showing himself to be that 1B back, which will be behind Jam Miller whenever he comes back. I'm really pleased with Kevin Riley. Don't want to dog him too much, but an Alabama guy through and through.
Northport,
yeah. So an Alabama guy through and through, which makes you at least feel good that that local guy is making a big difference.
Yeah.
I was pleased to see Isaiah Horton back on the field. He was kind of banged up. We got hurt early against Florida State. wasn't really sure what we were going to get with him, but you really saw a guy that a big physical receiver that was able to make some big catches down the line. And I think the biggest thing for offensive wise is that they had to sustain drives throughout the entire game. The longest play I think was about 30 yards. So I mean, really no 75-yard touchdown runs, one play to the house, really having to sustain drives and build off one another. Now translating to the defensive side of the ball, 12 tackles for loss. I mean, just Louisiana Monroe couldn't get anything going in the air, on the ground. Held Louisiana Monroe to less than 150 yards of total offense. Passing wise, they were terrible. I mean, really just flat out awful. Rushing wise, they not held their own, but they were okay. Got a little over 90 yards on 30 carries, and didn't have any breakaway plays, but were able to get first downs here and there, especially on the ground. But overall, defensive wise, a total team effort. No sacks, but 12 tackles for loss. We're really getting there and getting after quarterbacks, running backs, receivers as soon as the ball is snapped, and that makes you feel good. So it's always a good day when the opposing punter has more yards than the opposing offense, and you'll take that any day of the week on the defense side of the ball.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Graham. And one thing that I think really stands out about this performance, again, you cannot take a whole lot from this game other than the competitive character that you play with, the mental toughness, the physicality, the passion, the pride in performance, all of those things. And they were on full display like we wanted. But one thing that I really, really liked, and to me it was different, Kalen DeBoer has had the same demeanor that he had at Washington, and I'm guilty of this, and I think many Alabama fans are. We want him to be Nick Saban in a lot of ways. He's not. He's not going to dog cuss a guy. He's not going to just get up on, show somebody up on the field. That's not his style. He's a very positive individual, but it works for him. That's who he is. But one thing I did notice in this game, two things actually. There was a heightened level of focus and a heightened level of drive in him to me in this game. And it was apparent from when he stepped on the field. We were back in the hoodie. No more polo. Put that in the trash because that's not him. He is a hoodie guy through and through. And I think I loved how he was staying on guys, but again, but in his way, comfortable in his skin. And another thing that he said before the game, and he said after the game, and it kind of speaks to the point about Ty Simpson putting Austin Mack in. Competition breeds and brings out the best in others. And I think by rotating so many guys, rotating Michael Carroll in at right tackle. Will Conformity, you better perform, buddy, or Michael Carroll is going to take your job. I'm just telling you right now. Running backs, Kevin Riley ran his tail off. He's going to get the start against Louisiana Monroe. Not you, Richard Young, even though great blitz pickup by you on the touchdown, no doubt about it. But I like rewarding guys who play hard and play tough. And for some of the guys who feel like they're entitled or comfortable, complacent a little bit in a spot, put some pressure on them and put some guys out there that are hungry and ready to earn their money and earn their living, put food on their table. I love that. I think, to me, that is something going forward, fostering that environment, I think is very important. And the broadcast said that all week, Kalen DeBoer said, I'm going to show a little bit different side of myself. And I think what that was that heightened level of focus and drive. And I hope Alabama fans have to hope for the rest of the year that is what you see. You won't really know about the mental, we talked about the whole mental toughness and responding to adversity. You won't really know about that until the Georgia game. Even next week against Wisconsin, you might know a little bit, but spoiler alert, Wisconsin is not a very good football team for what I've seen this year through 2 weeks. But keep building, keep stacking performances. Defensively, the only thing that I'm going to highlight 2 guys. James Smith was an absolute game wrecker. I thought he played pretty well against Florida State. He took it to another level against Louisiana Monroe, and Alabama needs him to be a dominant presence along that interior of that defensive line. And when Tim Keenan comes back, hopefully next week or the week after, you're going to have a formidable duo on that front. London Simmons, the freshman, I thought did a lot of good things, but the guy I want to highlight who was hunting heads out there, baby, like his father, Dre Kirkpatrick Jr., you're going to miss the first half of the Wisconsin game, buddy. I don't even care. I don't even care. You forced a fumble, and you were out there flying around like your hair on fire. That's what I'm talking about. I love that. I love that. And I think that type of passion, that type of physicality needs to bleed in to the rest of that defense. So good win for Alabama. Good response. The ship is not – it might have hit a glacier, but now it's time to decide, is it going to be like the band and go down with the ship? Or is it going to hit that glacier, keep going stronger, keep going, and keep moving forward and have the season that you thought you were going to have before you had that loss against Florida State? Graham, before we get out of here, man, I mentioned it on the top. It was not as prominent of a matchup week as it was in week 1. It was hard to kind of live up to that hype. But, man, we had some good football games yesterday, Graham. Give me 2 storylines from across the country or across the SEC that really stood out to you from this past weekend, brother.
Yeah, I like the alternate scenes from the Titanic there. I like the good change. What if things would have happened differently? I definitely like that. If you did not see those scenes in the movie Titanic, you need to go watch it again. I think they're in the extras. You can find them there. 2 takeaways. 2 takeaways I've got one bad and one good. So I'm gonna start with the bad first.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna start with the bad first. Man, Mike Gundy, his time at Oklahoma State needs to be over. They got beat like a drum. I mean, they got absolutely smoked. And the sad thing is, they ended up losing like 69-3, something like that. Man, Oregon didn't score any points in the fourth quarter. It was 69-3 going into the fourth quarter. So in 3 quarters of a game, they got absolutely drummed. Had a terrible season last year, and what my perspective has been, and my perception of Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy's teams in the past is that when they're expected to do good, they do really poorly. Which was a season like last year where they were expected to compete for the Big 12 and ended up not even winning a single Big 12 game. Ended up winning only going like 3-9. And then this year they're underrated, and I was like, man, they're unranked. This is going to be Oklahoma State's year to kind of prove that they're back and that they have something to have a chip on their shoulder and something to kind of show. I think they said they had 60 new players on the team. Like the whole team was brand new from transfers and stuff like that. Let me just tell you, Mike Gundy will be looking for a new place to live and to coach next year. That was abysmal and flat out embarrassing if you're Oklahoma State. But good performance by Oregon, but I think that Oklahoma State's just that bad.
Their future.
The second thing, I think, and this is kind of a good but a question mark, and I'll throw it to you.
Okay.
Is Illinois the best team in the Big Ten?
Oh, okay.
I think you look at it, the schedule kind of lines up good for them, only having to play Ohio State and Nebraska, really those big time opponents. Play at Indiana in a few weeks, but they go on the
That's
road
going to be a
this
heck
week.
of a game, Graham.
Yeah, well, they go on the road this week, and really we're playing. It was like 17 to, it was 17, 17, something like that at half against Duke down in Durham, and they respond in a very good way in the second half. Brett Bielema has 19 starters returning, so basically the same team as last year. We saw them in I don't even know if it's still the Cheez-It Bowl, but they're playing in Arizona against South Carolina and really dominated South Carolina on both sides of the ball. I think that like I said, it's just a question. Are they the best team in the Big Ten? But I guess the kind of leads me into saying, will the Big Ten championship not have Ohio State or Penn State in it this year? That's tough. That is very tough.
Yeah. Well, that was, man, you came out firing with that one, brother. I loved it. I love it. I'm not going to go as far. I need a little bit more of a sample size before I'm there. But I don't know how you couldn't be impressed with their performance in Durham, because Duke is not a bad football team. They spent a bunch of money on Darian Mensah coming up from Tulane, who's a baller at quarterback.
Yeah.
And they, in that second half, like you said, suffocated and choked the life out of Duke. Duke couldn't do anything. They kept turning the ball over. And Illinois took advantage again and again and again. And, man, that Indiana-Illinois game is going to be a ton of fun in a few weeks. I think Ohio State and Penn State are really good. I think Michigan, even though they suffered a setback last night, I think they're going to be a contender in the Big Ten. But people don't need to sleep on the Illinois Fighting Illini. What were you going to say?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say that Duke's coming off a 9-3 season. Like Manny Diaz's first year in Durham, really taking over for Mike Elko and really just kind of helping continue that upward trajectory at Duke. So that Duke football team is not bad. Not bad at all.
No, they're not. I totally agree with you. And, man, I wasn't going to do it to you because I didn't want to throw you off. I wanted to run in the other room and get a prop when you were talking about Mike Gundy. And that prop was something that I was disciplined with when I was a child. Let's just say that.
No, yeah.
And Dan Landon took that thing out of his pants. Oh, God, that's something.
So, Hampton, but quick question before we get into it, just a personal question here. Did your parents gift you with the paddle you were paddled with as a child? Did they gift that to you as like a reminder growing up and kind of going out on your own?
No, my dad still wears that belt to this day, I think, my friend. And that is exactly what Dan Land did. He took that belt off and spanked Mike Gundy all the way home. And, yeah, Mike Gundy ain't going to be working in Stillwater next year. He might be a regular on the Pigskin Cafe with us at the rate that it's going. I'll just say that. But, wow. Wow, Mike Gundy and the Cowboys of Oklahoma State. They got some soul searching to do. Do you have anything else on that game before I get my takeaways, Graham?
No, I mean, like I said, I think Oregon's really good, but man, I mean, just Oklahoma State just wet in the bed. I mean, totally abysmal performance. I mean, you can't say anything else. There are no excuses. There really aren't any.
No, 100%, man. And it's not a good look when you're talking junk about Oregon's roster and how they're, they got more money than you, and so they're at an advantage. When literally week one, you played a team that you had a talent advantage and had a resource advantage. But now, I mean, it's pot calling the kettle black in all reality. But my few takeaways, before I get into my two main takeaways, I got to mention off the top, Baylor SMU, fun football game. Yeah. Baylor comes back down 2 touchdowns with 5 minutes left, forces it into 2 overtimes and wins. Sawyer Robertson, a dude at quarterback, and that was a must-win for Baylor. They could not afford to go 0-2 after
Yeah.
losing to Auburn the way they did at home, playing an SMU team that, I mean, they barbecued them in that first half, especially.
Yeah.
Kevin Jennings was 10-10 for like 220, doing his best Ty Simpson impression. And their defense, if they can get their defense figured out, Graham,
Yeah.
Baylor's going to be a handful. But I don't think
Yeah.
they have the personnel to do it. I
No.
refuse to believe Dave Aranda forgot how to coach defense. But if they can get it corrected, man, the offense is there. Great win by them. What'd you have on Baylor and SMU?
Yeah. Baylor has not lost to SMU since before the death penalty of SMU. So I mean, really, like, I know it's been that long. So Baylor continues their trajectory, and now it's not. I mean, it's still a rivalry, but now Big 12 ACC matchup there. So overall, it was a fun game.
It was indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, the 11 o'clock slate has some bangers, man. I'm telling you, people look at it and be like, "Oh, this is a down weekend." It's never a down weekend. We got college football on our screens, ladies and gentlemen. Don't you ever believe that? Don't believe the lies of the media. But you had that. You had Iowa and Iowa State. Iowa State starting 3-0 in back-to-back years for the first time since 2011 and 2012. Kudos to Matt Campbell, Rocco Becht, and that staff. Big win for them. Iowa set offense back another 100 years as they're prone to do. I thought they were supposed to have a better quarterback this year, and
must be something in the water. That must be something in the water.
It's got to be, brother, because that dude, God love him, he peed down his legs at the end of the game. he took like 2 or 3 sacks, and he was holding on to the ball. It wasn't even like it was poor protection, but great win by them. Then you had the border war. In the afternoon, you had Kansas and Mizzou. Mizzou gets down 21-6, storms back, and wins comfortably 42-31. Bo Perbula, maybe a problem. I'm really impressed with what I've seen from him in 2 weeks of action. And granted, I don't think the Kansas defense is very good, but the kid's a gamer. I know that much by watching him in 2 games this year. They got Kevin Coleman Jr., who is kind of their Luther Burden replacement. I've been really impressed with him. But also don't sleep on the job that Lance Leipold has done at Kansas. Jalen Daniels is one of the top quarterbacks in the country that nobody really talks about. They have an explosive offense, and the border war that they haven't played in a while, it delivered. And there's a funny story that I am not going to share about a kick that happened during that game.
Oh, yeah. And a shirt that found its way off.
And a shirt that found its way off, and a message that was underneath it. All I got to say is peak college football, everyone.
Yeah.
Peak college football. And for my brother Corbin, I will give Auburn a little bit of credit. You're ranked for the first time since 2021. We'll give a little clap for Auburn, a little golf clap since Hugh Freeze loves to golf. Again, that Baylor win does look better now after beating SMU. But you got a big test against Oklahoma coming up in 2 weeks. And Oklahoma, I thought, had a very impressive performance against Michigan. We're not going to break that game down by any stretch of imagination. But John Mateer proved to me once again, that he's a dude. He's a gamer. It ain't always going to be pretty, but I love watching that dude play. Bryce Underwood is going to be a star, but Brent Venables does what he does and had him confused, had him unsettled. And I'm telling you, man, their schedule's brutal. Watch out for Oklahoma this year. But now to my 2 main takeaways. But I mean, there's just too much goodness not to share, not to talk about. Man, I'm ready to run through a brick wall. The 2 main takeaways. Do we want the good or the bad first, Graham? Do we want to end the show on a high note, or do we want to end it on a poor note? Give it to me.
Go bad first. Bad news first. Because I did bad news first. Yeah, bad news first.
Well, that's a sip, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to on podcast. Bad news for Bad News Billy. Billy Napier, my guy, what are we doing? I can't believe Florida lost that football game. I cannot believe they lost that football game. The way that Florida ended last year was one of the more incredible college football turnarounds that I've seen in quite a while, with who they beat at the end of the year and how dead in the water that they looked at the beginning of the year. And, man, to come out against South Florida, who, let's give them credit, man. Against top-tier opponents, they show up. They gave Alabama all they wanted in 24 and 23. They gave Miami some smoke last year. They looked really impressive against Boise State and pounded them last week on Thursday night of the opening night of college football. But man, Florida, the clock management and the game management and the play calling at times during that game were just flat out bad. I think a conversation needs to be had about DJ Lagway. He doesn't look right to me. I watched DJ Lagway a ton last year, and he looks like a guy that missed spring practice and that missed the majority of fall camp. Because if you remember, his shoulder was hurt in spring, then he had a calf strain in fall camp, and they just looked so out of sync on offense. He was missing wide open throws. They ran the ball pretty well early, but then I don't know if they got away from it or just South Florida was kind of all over it. Just an inexcusable loss. And here's what I ended on with them. We said coming into the year, their schedule was brutal. Y'all, let me read this to you. I mean, this is like their next 4 or 5 football games. They go to LSU this week. Then they go to Miami. Then a bye week. Then Texas at home. Then to Texas A&M. And then they have Mississippi State, who we're about to talk about here in just a minute. Like, Graham, he might, and now watch him go beat LSU. Watch him go into Death Valley and get it done. But my gosh, bro.
Hey,
I just don't know. And it's the same issues that popped up early in the year last year, popped up yesterday, undisciplined play. What has gotten into football players and spitting? Jalen Carter is not a role model, ladies and gentlemen, other than his on-field play. Off the field and the other antics, don't emulate that, young defensive lineman. But that killed them. That was like the play of the game. I don't know, Graham. Give me your thoughts on that, and then we'll get on up out of here with a high note.
Yeah. I'm sure you've seen the video of South Florida's coaches running out of the press box after the game. That is a sign of some coaches that knew they just stole one. Like, they got something they didn't deserve. Being that excited on the road, a lot of times for these underdog teams, when they know they're going to win, it's all business from start to finish. South Florida knew they stole one. And, man, that just keeps rolling for the South Florida team. Alex Gole's done a great job in Tampa for South Florida. Beat the Boise State team pretty good, and now have a win at Florida.
Yeah,
I mean, they're going to be a fun team to watch in the American Conference, maybe in that Group of 5 spot for the college football playoff.
They absolutely are, and I tell you right now, if they have another good year, Mr. Golish is going to get a head coaching opportunity, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but what would be awful for my guy Billy, who I love. I love Billy Napier. I think he's a great guy. But, man, what if they fire Billy and then hire the guy that pretty much ended his career? I could see that happening, too, is what's crazy. I could see Florida saying, let's call you up from the minor leagues, buddy. Come be our head coach.
Yeah.
Talk about storylines. My heavens. But I talked about that Florida schedule, and I talked about kind of the end of the tough stretch being that Mississippi State game. That may not be a gimme anymore. How about those Bulldogs, man? Great win for Jeff Lebby. Great win for that program to beat a team in Arizona State who went to the college football playoff last year, had aspirations this year, and they still do, have aspirations in the Big 12. That's a big-time win, man. That is the type of win that you need to have to set the foundation and to really get your guys to buy into what you're doing. And to do it in the fashion that they did, you hold them, you have a goal line stand at the 1 yard line, hold them to a field goal, get the ball back, 3rd and 9. I don't know what defensive coverage Arizona State was running to let a guy get that open, not have really any safety back. Perplexing, interesting decision, but you executed that, you scored the touchdown, and then immediately your defense doesn't even leave any doubt. You pick Sam Levitt off, ball game. Great win for Mississippi State, and I'm so proud of that program, proud for Jeff Levy and his good cousin, Boo Shirley. And I'm interested to see now, how does Mississippi State go forward now? Are they going to be kind of more frisky of a team than we thought going in? If so, the SEC just got even deeper, which is scary to consider. Graham, you got any closing thoughts before we get out of here, man? I feel like we went off the rails the last 20 minutes of the show, but man, it was a ton of fun.
Yeah, it was. Arizona State, I mean, like you said, a really good football team, but they've got a target on their back this year. They proved a lot of people wrong last year and were really underappreciated, undervalued, and in a sense, underrespected. But now, like I said, they've got, they're circling to everybody's schedule, and Mississippi State is not an easy place to play. More cowbell, more cowbell, more cowbell. Great win for Mississippi State.
Love it, buddy. Well, everyone, if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for listening and tuning in to the Pigskin Cafe. I'll echo what I said at the top. Graham and I do this show because we're great friends, but we love college football, and we thank the Lord that we have a passion that we're able to talk about and discuss week after week. And we do this show if nobody watched. But to have the support that we did last week and that we've had for the past 2 or 3 years means a ton to us, and we don't take it for granted. So if you liked what you saw today and you want to see more, go ahead, hit that like button, comment your thoughts on what you took away from the Alabama game, what your biggest takeaway from college football as a whole was in week 2, and hit that notification bell. Follow us on social media, and we love hearing from you guys, and we just appreciate it more than you could ever know. We will be back next week to recap what is going to be a crazy week 3. I mean, I don't know if you've peeked ahead, Graham, but we've got Georgia and Tennessee. We've got Notre Dame and Texas A&M. We've got Alabama and Wisconsin. And I'm forgetting a few. I mean, there's a ton of just high-profile matchups, and I can't wait to be back here next week to discuss it all with you. So, the Pigskin Cafe is going to be closed for now. But until next week, chew on that.